Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
The committee of parole is called to order. Today is October 19th, 2022. Time is 8:34 a.m. Committee of parole is at the DOC headquarters in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with the staff at DOC headquarters. Introduce yourself.
John Hosea? Gary Young.
Gail Garian.
Whitney Tressler.
Thank you. Our remote location today is at Louisiana State Penitentiary in Angola, Louisiana, with the staff at Louisiana State Penitentiary. Introduce yourself.
Deputy Warden Tracy Falgood, Regional Admiral, classification.
Carmen Shipley, offender records.
Good morning, staff. We're ready for our first case. Would the offender please introduce yourself, give your name and your DOC number?
Gerald Carter, 4756.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. My name is Alvin Roche, and I will chair the committee this morning. To my left is Mr. Anthony Marabella, and to my right is Mr. Pete Freeman. We will be your panel this morning. Let me explain the process to you. I will read some information into the record. Once the information is in the record, then we'll have a parole interview with you. At the appropriate time, we'll allow Warden Falgood or his staff to make remarks if they wish. We have a guest, and your mother will be allowed to make a statement at the appropriate time. After everything is complete, before we vote, we will allow you to make a statement on your behalf. Do you understand the process?
Yes, sir.
With us this morning by Zoom, we have your mother, Celestine Carter, and she would like to make a statement on your behalf. And in opposition, we have Ms. Margaret Hay from the Jefferson Parish District Attorney's Office that would like to make a statement. And those statements will be done at the appropriate time. Mr. Carter,
Yes, sir.
your birthday is August 28, 1971. You're a first felony offender. Your offenses are forcible rape, aggravated sexual battery, aggravated oral sexual battery, intentional exposure to AIDS. You were sentenced on 11/4/2003. You were sentenced to 40 years. Your parole date was August 2nd, 2022. You're not eligible for good time, and your full term date is August 1st, 2042. Is this information correct?
Yes, sir.
Your case has been assigned to Mr. Anthony Marabella. Would you please answer Mr. Marabella's question?
Good morning, Mr. Carter.
I'm sorry, Mr. Roche, this is Warden Falgood. We had a staff member that had stepped out during the introduction, so I'm going to get her to go ahead for the record, state her name, and let you know that she's here.
Please do.
Jody Surgeon, Transition Specialist.
Thank you, ma'am. Marabella.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Carter, my name is Tony Marabella. I'll be asking you some questions today. I'm going to start our interview process, okay?
Yes, sir.
Carter, are you 51 years old? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How long have you been in prison on these charges?
20 years.
20
Sir.
years.
Yes, sir.
And so you were 31 when you came to prison?
Yes, sir.
How old were you when these crimes were committed?
I was 30 at the time.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about who you were at that time. Were you working? Did you have a job?
No, sir, unemployed.
What kind of work had you ever done? Had you had a job before?
Yes, sir.
What kind of work did you do before you were unemployed?
Janitorial, dishwasher, cleaning up.
And you graduated high school?
Yes, sir.
And when did you graduate? What year did you graduate?
August 1990 out of summer school.
Okay. And after you graduated high school, did you ever go beyond that? Did you go to college? Did you do any other educational work?
Only thing I did after high school, 8 years later, I went to truck driving school.
Okay. And
That's right.
what kind of jobs did you have between the time you graduated and the time you went to truck driving school?
Janitorial work, cleaning up.
Okay. Mr. Carter, did you have or do you have any sort of a drinking or drug problem? Did you do drugs back then?
Yes, sir, I had a drug problem.
Talk to me about your drugs. What kind of drugs did you take?
I used to smoke a lot of weed and cocaine
When did you start?
when I was 19.
You started on marijuana or you started on cocaine as well?
Started on both of them.
And how often were you doing marijuana and cocaine?
2 or 3 times a day.
How long had you been unemployed back in 2002?
A year.
And did your drug habit, your drug addiction have anything to do with your being unemployed?
No, sir.
Why were you unemployed? Why didn't you have a job for a year or so?
I lost my eyesight.
Well, I thought you'd lost your eyesight when you were in Angola.
Yeah, 2014, my vision was real blurry.
Okay, well, 2002, I'm talking about. I'm talking about back when you were committing these offenses. Did you lose your
Yeah.
eyesight then?
No, I had my eyesight then.
Okay, well, my question is, why weren't you working in 2002? You said you had been unemployed for about a year. Why
Yeah.
were you unemployed?
It was by choice.
Why was your choice? What was your choice?
I
Why
didn't
did you
want to
choose
work.
to be unemployed?
I didn't want to work.
You didn't want to work. Why is that?
Huh?
Why didn't you want to work? How were you supporting yourself?
I live with my mom.
You were doing drugs every day then?
No, sir.
Well, when did you quit using drugs? I'm confused, Mr. Carter. I'm just trying to get some answers here about your background. I'm trying to figure out were you on drugs when all of this was going on? You told me that you were heavy on the drugs. You were using drugs 2 and 3 times a day. You were unemployed for a year before this happened because by choice. And I'm just trying to find out, were you using drugs? Were drugs the reason why you didn't want to work? What was the problem?
Drug problem.
So how often were you using drugs?
Daily. 2 or 3 times.
Mr. Carter, have you ever been to a counselor or a psychiatrist or ever had a mental health evaluation of any kind before you came to prison?
Yeah, when I was on the street.
Tell me about what kind of mental health counselor you went to while you were on the street.
When I went to somebody to talk to, I lost my father when I was 10, so they had a lot to do with it.
Did you ever take any kind of medication for it? Were you prescribed any sort of medicines?
Yeah, I was on prescription medication.
What kind of medications were you taking?
Taking the Rodin and I think it was Haldol.
And were you taking them regularly?
Yes, sir. It's prescribed by the doctor.
Were you taking them at the time? Now, let's talk about what happened between you and your daughter. You confessed to having raped your daughter from the time she was 4 years old until she was 10 years old at least 2 times a month, regularly. Tell me about that. How does a father do something like that? Tell me what was going on with you and why did you do that?
I made a bad decision and it cost me the 20 years I was incarcerated. I wasn't myself back then.
You made a bad decision and it cost you 20 years of incarceration. What did it do to your daughter?
It started for life.
And what do you think about that?
It's a terrible situation.
Well, Mr. Carter, I'm trying to find out. I'm a father myself. I don't have any daughters, but I'm trying to find out how a father could rape his daughter at the age of 4 until she was 10 years old, 2 times a month, under all kinds of horrible circumstances. Put your hand on her face or mouth so she couldn't scream when other people were in the house. I'm trying to figure out what motivates a man to do something like that. I'm trying to figure out who you were then and who you are now. What can you tell me about what you did?
I'm remorse for what I did to my victim and her family.
Well, I hear you saying the words remorseful. What does that mean?
I'm sorry for the crime I committed against my daughter.
You're sorry, why?
Because it's the wrong thing to do. And when I joined church, the Lord showed me it was the wrong thing to do.
Mr. Carter, have you taken the 4 phases of sex offender treatment while you've been in prison?
All I did was take the substance abuse and anger management before the
I hear
court.
that. But did you take the sex offender treatment program?
No, I didn't get a chance to take that.
Well, you didn't get a chance, or did you refuse to take it? You were offered that. You've been in prison for 20 years, and you were offered that program, and you refused to take it. Why?
I don't know. I refused to take it. I don't remember being refused to take it.
If you had the opportunity to say something to your daughter today, what would you say to her?
I wronged her in a terrible situation, and I know I wasn't a good father, so I was a terrible father.
Tell me why I should vote to release you early when I'm not convinced you're not going to go back out and do this same thing again, maybe to someone else. Tell me why I should release you, why I should take a chance on you.
All I can tell you, sir, is I base everything in the hands of God.
What is your physical? I know that you're blind. Are you legally blind?
Yes, sir.
What is your physical health? I mean, while all of this was going on, you actually had HIV and you knew it.
Yes, I did.
What are your thoughts about that? I mean, tell me what sort of realization you've come to about what you did while you've been in prison and why I should think you're not going to do something like this again.
Well, for one, being blind, I'm not in shape to do the crime that I committed when I was young, at that time when I was a younger man.
You think blind people can't molest children?
I didn't say that.
Well, that's kind of what you said. One of the reasons why I should trust you is because you're blind.
Taking into consideration what was being said.
I'm listening. What other reasons?
All I can do is offer what I've been incarcerated for. In the 20 years I've been incarcerated, rehabilitated, well-disciplined, and well-respectful.
You've done some good things while you've been in prison, but you haven't taken sex offender treatment, which is a program that would kind of give you an idea of what damage you've caused to your daughter. You've refused to take that. I don't know why you refused to take it, but you refused to take it. But the bottom line is you've been in 20 years and you didn't take it. What's going to prevent you from going back to using drugs if you get out?
You stay with my mother.
You're going to stay with your mother. Where were you staying when all this was happening?
I was at my mother's house.
Oh, what's the difference between then and now? Aside from the fact that your daughter isn't going to be around. You were doing drugs back then.
Yes, sir.
So what's your plan to stay sober?
Going to church and serving the Lord on a daily basis.
Now, you took anger management and you took living in balance. Those are the only two programs that you've taken while you've been in prison?
Yes, sir.
Warden, what can you tell us about Mr. Carter?
I'm looking at his record, from the time he came to us back in '04 until looks like March of 19, he pretty much stayed, in cell blocks. Came out in 19 and has lived, in a dormitory since then. I did go back and find in his record where he did sign refusal, back upon admission December of '03 for, the sex offender treatment program. And then the fact that he was in the cell block for most of that. Last write-up was in 13. Other than that, he has had a couple, a few of these programs that you spoke of earlier. That's really about all I have to add to it at this point.
Thank you very much, Warden. I appreciate your comments. Mr. Chairman, that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Marabella. Warden Falco,
Yes, sir.
Jack, hear you correctly, you've been in the cell block since 2004 to 2019?
Let me review just to verify that. Let's see. He actually was transferred out of the cell blocks into a dorm September 17th of 19. His first housing came in was extended at Camp C Jaguar and had pretty much stayed in a cell block did.
So that tells the whole story. Thank you, Warden. At this time, we'd like to hear from your mother, Ms. Celestine Carter. Ms. Carter, would you unmute your mic and give your statement?
Of course. My son, Jerry Carter, has been incarcerated for quite some time. During his incarceration, his daughter made the claim as well as gave a written statement to the Innocence Project, as well as my pastor, my now deceased sister, that this did not happen. My granddaughter also has some psychiatric history, as well as my son. My son was in a cell block because when he was on the streets, there was a gang called the Dark Side Posse at one point in time that he was with, and some of those offenders are housed at Angola. I've watched my son grow over the 20 years that he's been incarcerated, as well as become totally blind. I feel that there are conflicting stories. Number one, the Innocence Project took his case and that the New Orleans area disbanded post-Katrina, or they were no longer available to him. And again, these conflicting stories, as well as how he's reacting since he's been incarcerated, has prompted me to feel that my son is ready to be released. His daughter, again, she visited him many times at LSP by choice. Even when she was grown, she wanted to go and see her daddy. She would still like to see her daddy. And that gives me some conflicting information. When talked to, she kind of wavers on what she has to say about her daddy, except that she loves him and she wants to see him and be around him. And I don't think that's a love as far as passion is concerned. I think it's a love that a daughter has for her daddy. So those are the things that make me feel like my son will come out at some point in time, and if necessary, I'll hire a lawyer and let them talk to her and see what she's saying at this point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
Now we hear from the Assistant District Attorney in Jefferson Parish, Ms. Margaret Hay. Ms. Hay?
Yes, good morning, members of the board. I would, obviously, the state is opposed to the release of or parole being granted for Mr. Carter. The things that have been spoken today as it relates to the victim, I've been a prosecutor for 30 years. I am now the first assistant district attorney here in Jefferson. I actually worked in Jefferson back when Mr. Carter was convicted. The things that jump out to me as a career prosecutor, one of whom has done child abuse work and screened child abuse cases and actually supervised that division, is that when children are victimized at such a young age, between the ages of 4 and 10, by their own biological father, they are very conflicted because they are groomed and they learn, or they are taught that that's okay, and that a father shows his love to his child that way. That's what we call grooming in child abuse work. The victim is not here today to speak and tell the board what her grandmother is saying, that she loves her father and she would like to see him and have a relationship with him. That is not unusual when children are victimized at such a young age. I think that it's important to bring to the board's attention that Mr. Carter was actually indicted for aggravated rape. The state of Louisiana reduced his charge to forcible rape to allow him to plead guilty to a term of years as opposed to a life sentence. Based on my experience as a prosecutor, both in this office and in the Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office, 9 times out of 10, especially in situations where the child victim is the biological child of the accused, the state of Louisiana will oftentimes make those reductions in order to prevent further harm to the child by having her take the witness stand in front of 12 strangers in an open courtroom and testify to horrific acts that were perpetrated upon her by her own biological father. While I searched for documentation of that in this particular file, I was not able to find that, but based on my experience as a prosecutor, I believe that that was probably the reason that this matter was reduced. Furthermore, I think it's very telling that Mr. Carter stood in front of a judge, Judge Henry Sullivan, here in the 24th JDC on November the 6th of 2003 and pled guilty to a crime and acknowledged to the court under oath that he committed this crime. And a month later, when being processed into the Department of Corrections, signed a paper in December of 2003 refusing sex offender treatment. Finally, I close by saying that this office has worked very, very closely with the Innocence Project on numerous cases, both murders and sex offenses. We have actually vacated convictions based on information that has been brought to us by the Innocence Project. As the first assistant district attorney here, I am not aware of the Innocence Project reaching out to us on Mr. Carter's case. I will once again and go back and research that, but as the first assistant district attorney, any cases that are vacated are reviewed by myself and the district attorney, and I am not familiar with the Innocence Project bringing us any evidence to suggest that Mr. Carter's conviction should be reviewed for vacating or for granting of a new trial. Thank you very much.
Ms. Hay, we appreciate the information and thank you for your attendance.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Carter,
Yes, sir.
would you like to make a closing statement?
I'm very remorseful toward the victim and her family.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Is the panel ready to vote? Mr. Marabella?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Carter, I've listened very intently to everyone speaking here today. And I look back at the file, we don't come here empty-handed. We have the entire record before us. I've read your confession. You said to the police in your own words. I did not hear you today say, I didn't do this, but your mother says you didn't do it. You have not taken any sex offender treatment program. I do not know why you refused to take it, but you didn't. You have no real plan to stay sober. You indicate to me that you were on drugs for the longest time, and back then, you just didn't feel like working. So you just weren't working. You were doing drugs and you were molesting your child, your own daughter, for a long time. I think you've done some good things while you've been in prison. You've been a fairly good prisoner. You haven't been in a lot of trouble. You haven't taken very many classes. You just kind of been there. But your daughter's safe and other people are safe while you're in prison. And until you do some things to better yourself, to give me a fair understanding that if I vote to let you out, you're not going to go back to drugs and potentially molesting children again. My vote today is to deny your parole. But good luck to you, and I hope that you can take some courses that allow you to look inwardly to see who you are, what you did, and what you make sure you do not to do that in the future. Good luck to you.
Thank you, Mr. Marabella. Mr. Freeman?
My vote also is to deny, basically because of the seriousness of the offense and no sex offender treatment. You need to take that sex offender treatment.
Mr. Carter?
Yes, sir.
You have received 2 votes to deny your request based upon a lack of rehabilitative programs, opposition from the DA's office, law enforcement opposition, and a failure to take your sex offender treatment. My vote also is to deny your request. You have received 3 votes to deny your request. Your request for early release has been denied. You have a good day.
Thank you.
The smug look on his mother's face. I get how mothers can be in denial because they have to be in denial because they can't live with the fact that their son can be a monster, a cockroach, the boogeyman. But this is taking it to a whole different level. We have seen in one case where the predator was disowned by its family, by its family. Just one. But to drag his daughter to see him in jail, in prison, to insinuate that she has psychotic problems that she made it up, to threaten lawsuits and lie about the Innocence Project taking on this case. Look what's in front of you. He hasn't even denied it a single time. He pled guilty. No father pleads guilty to something like that. That's not something that you plead guilty to. Normally I give moms a pass and I like need to focus on the cockroach itself, but I think that we can clearly see that this was an enabler. It was under her roof that this was happening. Under your roof, where your son didn't have a job, was addicted to drugs, and was sticking his hand down her mouth so that she couldn't scream. He admitted to twice a month. Obviously, it was a lot more than twice a month. That's what he admitted to. Doing it for years. Why did he do it? I made a bad decision. And I'll see, you guys do a great job in the comments section with all the analogies of what a bad decision is. Like, drinking too much tequila last night was a bad decision. Forgetting your umbrella was a bad decision. Raping your daughter? From the time she's 4 years old until the time you got caught? That was a bad decision? He literally said what he learned when asked the question, I made a mistake and it cost me 20 years of incarceration. I made a mistake and it cost me 20 years of incarceration. And this happened under your roof, Mom. He has HIV. That was just like something, this case, it kept piling on. When he thought it couldn't get worse, another layer was dropped onto it. He had HIV. He's raping his daughter. I'm sorry, but this mother needs to be investigated for bringing now the daughter to visit him, making her think that she's crazy, that she made it up. How does she have custody? Well, she's older now. But to think that you would be it, why do you think you won't do it again? Well, I'm blind. You think blind people can't molest children? You know, there was not one thing that this cockroach said that even like there are people that are come into this world that are not like everyone else, and they have no business being free. And you know, thank goodness the DA, assistant DA, showed up, because we have seen so many cases where they don't show up. And and we learned a few things. You know, we can understand. Okay, so he got 40 years. He got a plea deal because they didn't want to put their daughter through a trial. His daughter through a trial. But then what happens is 20 years later, fast forward, and here we are. And I don't know how many. Well, I think with the new law passing, he's going to have to wait something like 5 years to apply for parole. I can drop the link in there. They passed a new law which made it that sex offenders have to wait a longer period of time after denial. He was moved from the cell blocks into the dorm. His mother has an excuse for him in 2019. And that was because there was a gang he used to run with. What, so there's not a gang there anymore? Uh-huh. I wonder how he's gotten away with being in general population for so long. People don't care, do they? Prison justice doesn't exist, does it? I hear that it doesn't exist. You just watched your son. He's. I can't anymore. And one day he will be free. Your eyesight's gone. Maybe other things will follow soon. It'll be a slow, painful deterioration. A slow death. It's there is not one redeeming factor. Not one redeeming factor about this cockroach. What the mom said, can you believe it? She said she loves her daddy. And then she goes on to say it's not a love as far as passion is concerned, but a love a daughter has for her daddy. What? You know, there is something wrong when you feel that that's what you have to say when talking about your daughter loving her daddy. Love as far as passion is concerned. She doesn't even realize how sick it is that she says that. She loves her daddy. A love, it's not a love as far as passion is concerned, but a love that a daughter has for her daddy. Sorry, lady, but you don't have a right to even use that word in daddy in context. He is not her daddy. He might have biologically created her, and that is it. You know, they sometimes monsters are born, sometimes they're created, and maybe in this sense it's a mixture of both. You enabled that thing, and you gave birth to that thing. Who knows what demons are hiding behind your smug face? Happened under her roof. I don't know. Is my anger pointed towards her? Is this uncalled for? Should I be pointing it solely at this cockroach? I think I'm done.